This is Mark Gunn Media.
Hey!
Welcome to Gunshots Straight from the Hip. I'm your host, Mark Gunn. The views expressed on this program are those of the host and guests and not necessarily reflective of anyone or any entity associated with this broadcast. This episode, Tik Tok across America. I wanted to do something a little different this week. I have been using an app called Tik Tok for a long time now, and I wanted to spotlight it because there's such a diversity of thought and such a diversity of content. And then a lot of times, you learn a lot of stuff that you wouldn't have learned elsewhere. And this is a good place where critical race theory can come into play. This episode, you're going to be hearing some of the experiences of TikTokers from across America. Everything from politics to social issues, maybe even a little goofy stuff too.
If you don't like it, if you don't want your white children being taught that, say, white terrorists murdered black people throughout the South in a successful campaign to end the experiment of multiracial democracy and replace it with authoritarian apartheid, well, then that's critical race theory. You see how that works? So now the Republicans are railing about free speech to basically make it impossible or even criminal to teach certain things in schools. But it's all part of the same story, right? They're running back to the old tactics from the past, while making it harder at the same time for people to learn the truth about that past. These are two fronts in the same war. It's the oldest battle in this country. Are we going to be a democracy for everyone or not?
One of the big hot button topics right now is critical race theory. People are wringing their hands and gnashing with a whole lot of anxiety about whether or not it should be taught. Well, the game just got changed when the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Mark Wiley, was asked about the subject.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, gentlemen, for joining us today. I know my time is very precious, but I would like to yield some of my time to General Milley because I know that he had some comments that he wanted to make when Representative Gates was talking, as well as Mr. Waltz, about a similar subject of the stand down and race theory. Would you like a minute or so to comment on that? Do you remember what your line of questioning or thought was there?
Sure. First of all, on the issue of critical race theory, et cetera, I'll obviously have to get much smarter on whatever the theory is. But I do think it's important, actually, for those of us in uniform to be open-minded and be widely read. And the United States Military Academy is a university. And it is important that we train and we understand. And I want to understand white rage, and I'm white, and I want to understand it. So what is it that caused thousands of people to assault this building and try to overturn the Constitution of the United States of America? What caused that? I want to find that out. I want to maintain an open mind here, and I do want to analyze it. It's important that we understand that because our soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, and Guardians, they come from the American people. So it is important that the leaders, now and in the future, do understand it. I've read Mao Zedong. I've read Karl Marx. I've read Lenin. That doesn't make me a communist. So what is wrong with understanding, having some situational understanding about the country for which we are here to defend? And I personally find it offensive that we are accusing the United States military, our general officers, our commissioned, non-commissioned officers, of being, quote, woke or something else because we're studying some theories that are out there. That was started at Harvard Law School years ago, and it proposed that there were laws in the United States, antebellum laws prior to the Civil War, that led to a power differential with African Americans that were three-quarters of a human being when this country was formed. And then we had a Civil War and Emancipation Proclamation to change it. And we brought it up to the Civil Rights Act in 1964. It took another 100 years to change that. So look, I do want to know. And I respect your service, and you and I are both Green Berets, but I want to know. And it matters to our military and the discipline and cohesion of this military. And I thank you for the opportunity to make a comment on that.
Thank you, General. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, gentlemen, for joining us today. I know my time is very precious, but I would like to yield some of my time to General Milley because I know that he had some comments that he wanted to make when Representative Gates was talking, as well as Mr. Waltz, about a similar subject of the stand down and race theory. Would you like a minute or so to comment on that? Do you remember what your line of questioning or thought was there?
Sure. First of all, on the issue of critical race theory, et cetera, I'll obviously have to get much smarter on whatever the theory is. But I do think it's important, actually, for those of us in uniform to be open-minded and be widely read. And the United States Military Academy is a university. And it is important that we train and we understand. And I want to understand white rage, and I'm white, and I want to understand it. So what is it that caused thousands of people to assault this building and try to overturn the Constitution of the United States of America? What caused that? I want to find that out. I want to maintain an open mind here, and I do want to analyze it. It's important that we understand that because our soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, and Guardians, they come from the American people. So it is important that the leaders, now and in the future, do understand it. I've read Mao Zedong. I've read Karl Marx. I've read Lenin. That doesn't make me a communist. So what is wrong with understanding, having some situational understanding about the country for which we are here to defend? And I personally find it offensive that we are accusing the United States military, our general officers, our commissioned, non-commissioned officers of being, quote, woke or something else because we're studying some theories that are out there. That was started at Harvard Law School years ago, and it proposed that there were laws in the United States, antebellum laws prior to the Civil War, that led to a power differential with African Americans that were 3/4 of a human being when this country was formed. And then we had a Civil War and Emancipation Proclamation to change it. And we brought it up to the Civil Rights Act in 1964. It took another 100 years to change that. So look, I do want to know. And I respect your service, and you and I are both Green Berets, but I want to know. And it matters to our military and the discipline and cohesion of this military. And I thank you for the opportunity to make a comment on that.
Feedback about General Wiley's remarks came swift. Some in support.
When I saw that video, it made me extremely happy to know that the commanding general of the United States Army, the Army Chief of Staff, recognizes that critical race theory is something that needs to be talked about to make our force a more well-rounded force and a more diverse force. Awareness is key. Knowing what to combat is key. We often refrain in the military from talking about racial issues because it's a very uncomfortable subject, a subject that is getting a lot more traction and a subject that is getting talked about a lot more. I am a trained equal opportunity leader within the United States Army. One day I will be a trained equal opportunity advisor. I'm also part of a diversity committee that is devoted to identifying and rectifying any racial issues within the unit. And not only within the unit, also within the surrounding communities that surround our installation. Knowing that the Chief of Staff said what he said helps a lot.
And others took outrage.
Sending our tax dollars to this military to an attempt to weed out so-called extremists, which just means conservative evangelical, as far as I can tell.
And there's Laura Ingraham saying the quiet stuff out loud again, completely admitting that it's conservative evangelicals that are the extremists in the military. She's clutching her pearls because the Secretary of Defense, General Milley, had the audacity to promote diversity in the military. And then there was this.
Is Congress not saying we're not going to give you a penny until all of this is eradicated from the military budget? Nothing. This is my offer to you.
I mean, I agree we should audit the Pentagon and defund the military. Not for these asinine racist reasons, though. I'd like to remind everyone that Laura Ingram's family disowned her. They can't fucking stand her. Her own brother said she's a white supremacist. Laura Ingraham is the type of people we need to weed out of normal society and discourse.
One of the other things we're starting to see quite a bit of, especially on TikTok, are white voices speaking out against racism.
If you are white and you work somewhere predominantly white and you happen to have a person of color that is on your team, treat them as such. I say this because early on at my new job, we have one gentleman that's a person of color, and I noticed that unbeknownst to him, there were some microaggressions about his use of his phone and his attendance. So what did I do? Well, I fucking told him. I told him what those little white rednecks were saying about him and gave him a heads up. Because you know what those white rednecks didn't do? They didn't give him a heads up. They just complained to each other about it. If you notice that ish, pick a team and be on that theme. 100.
More and more people are learning Black history through TikTok.
We built the country for you, fought, bled, and died to maintain the country for you. You ask us to pay taxes like everybody else. Wait a minute, we don't get justice. We give you our tax dollar to support a police department that doesn't respect us. We give you our tax dollar to support education that does not educate us properly. We give you our tax dollars. You spend $4 billion each year on Israel to maintain Israel in a welfare position. You send billions of dollars. You rebuild Germany. You rebuild Japan. Here we are, fought, bled, and died, made you what you are. What are you willing to come on down with to help the black man rebuild himself?
Voices that have long been in the cause of equality get a larger platform, like Dr. Jane Elliott.
Here comes the to find out where the first modern human being evolved on this earth. And what they found was that the first modern human being who evolved on this earth was a black female. And in every one of your genes runs the memory of that first black female. People of color have been on the earth longer than white people have. That's a fact. And they to find out where the first modern human being evolved on this earth. And what they found was that the first modern human being who evolved on this earth was a black female. And in every one of your genes runs the memory of that first black female. People of color have been on the earth longer than white people have. That's a fact. And they to find out where the first modern human being evolved on this earth. And what they found was that the first modern human being who evolved on this earth was a black female. And in every one of your genes runs the memory of that first black female. People of color have been on the earth longer than white people have. That's a fact.
In addition to learning history, you're also getting a first-hand education about this country's racist past.
Sundown Town is a place where if you're black, you do not want to be caught after dark, or if you're just non-white. I'm going to take you through an entire town in about 2 minutes. This is Millport, New York. I'm going to take you past the first place I ever got the N-word called to my face very, very loudly and very proudly. If you take a look to the right, you go up that hill and there it goes. Everybody up there is related, by the way. I am not joking. This is not a... It's like everybody's almost like their cousins or nieces or something. And we're just driving at this point. We're very close to the end. Once you see the trailer parks on your right, that will be the end of the town. I am not joking. You probably get through it in a couple minutes and look at all those American flags. Yeah, there's a Confederate one in the back, probably. I guarantee you. And we're driving. We are still driving. Yeah, if you're black, just don't get caught after dark. It does not feel safe. There is a bar not too far up the road. That's what the first time I got told I'll be hung from a tree, but not the last time out here because it's Sonoma, New York. Gotta keep it Mississippi. And we're driving. That ice cream place right there, the best ice cream ever. Like, and she wasn't from here. She's not Russian. Is she Russian? I don't think she's Russian, but I don't want to say she's the wrong thing, but she wasn't from here, and I love to support her. Same way as the Jamaican place that has been abandoned for I don't know how long. There's a Jamaican restaurant not too far out in Horseheads that I love to go to. It's black owned, obviously, and we're at the end of town. But yeah, Sundown Town places, it doesn't feel good.
You're also learning that the sins of the past are very much present in the here and now.
So there was a championship basketball game here in San Diego, California. Orange Glen High School versus Coronado High School. Coronado High School won the championship game at the buzzer, I might add, a fadeaway split. They won and took home the 4A regional title. Good for them. But instead of them taking the championship and going away with the W, they caught an L. In the midst of the coaches arguing, because I guess the coaches were arguing about something, the Coronado team got tortillas and decided to throw them at the predominantly Hispanic Orange Glen High School team. Now, there's one thing to be chippy in a basketball game, people talk trash, and there's another thing to be ignorant and stupid, and even borderline racist. CIF is doing an investigation, and Coronado High School says they're going to take swift action. With the climate right now, I hope whoever picked up a tortilla on that team and threw it needs to be used as an example and kicked off that team. Malcriados de mierda.
There's even a special category called white folks getting tired of other white folks.
So the IKEA store in Atlanta thought it would be a good idea to celebrate Juneteenth by sending an email to its employees that they were going to offer a special menu that day, a menu that consisted of fried chicken, watermelon, collard greens, and macaroni and cheese. I cannot understand the level of caucasity that went into this issue, the foolishness and fear that went into this issue, who came up with this issue, and who thought this was a good idea. IKEA, you had one job and all the way up. You all need some diversity training. Somebody get Auntie Jane Elliott to the IKEA Atlanta store now. White people, y'all really need to stop with this issue.
One of my favorite things about being on TikTok is the open challenges that show just how loud and wrong some people can be.
Africans came from a place of actual oppression while black Americans think that they're oppressed.
All right, so a couple things, buddy. First, please define for us actual oppression. Then explain how the experience of black Americans doesn't line up with that definition. Then explain why you fancy yourself to be an expert on actual and fake oppression, such that you're gonna pit different groups of black people based on their origin against each other. You're sort of like the Oppression Olympics Grand Master, or is it Grand Wizard?
From attempted deception through misinformation to wanting to claim victimhood?
I am actually experiencing oppression. You want people to feel bad because you feel oppressed.
Scott Dieter Tiffany pled guilty to crimes that led to him being registered as a sex offender, and now he's claiming that he's been oppressed by the American government. He's saying that black people are pretending to be oppressed, but that he's actually been oppressed and overcome it. You pleading guilty to being a sex offender does not make the consequences that go with that oppression. The only thing that you've proven is that a white registered sex offender is granted a lot more privileges than innocent black people.
And we even deal with the occasional every skin folk ain't kinfolk dilemma.
Now, I don't know how many of y'all have heard this, but GOP Republican Byron Donalds out of Florida is upset with the Congressional Black Caucus, you know, the conscience of Congress, because his membership has been blocked. Take a listen.
Black Caucus because he's a Republican. In a statement to CNN, the CBC didn't comment directly on the situation, but said this: the Congressional Black Caucus remains committed to fighting for issues that support black communities, including the police accountability bill, protecting voting rights, and a jobs bill that helps our communities. We will work with those who share our values and priorities for the constituents that we serve.
Yeah, this ain't nothing more than a stunt. Boy, you about a day late and a dollar short. Or I don't know, maybe it's because you got friends in low places.
When people proudly have their Confederate flags, they're not talking about racism. They love their flag. It represents the South. What do you prefer, blacks for Trump or African Americans?
Some TikTok users have even created their own daily features.
Hey players, it's time for another riveting episode of playing stupid games and winning stupid prizes. Now this lovely black queen is Quita Good. She owns a house in Colonial Heights, Virginia, and she has been being harassed by her neighbor. So much so that the police were called to her home to search her for drugs because her neighbor doesn't believe she can afford the house and the Porsche that she owns. Oh yes, honey, the police searched her house and no drugs were found. Well, a couple of days ago, things came to a head. Oh, yes. She said her neighbor is not the right color and called her the N-word. But I don't think good old Hillary here thought things through because she had her work badge on. So Quita posted the video to social media. People came out to the neighborhood to protest, and Hillary's job was quickly identified, and the food bank fired that.
Some creators are really good at using comedy to talk about the day's headlines.
You know what I don't understand? Why do white people want to say the N-word when we have my guy, my dude? Hey, watch it, buddy. Whoa, cool it, pal. Listen here, Buster.
January 6th, what really happened? Hello, children. You might have heard some crazy things about what happened on January 6th.
A violent, armed insurrection.
But knowledge is power. So here's the true story of that eventful day. The sun was shining and thousands of patriots had gathered to peacefully protest, huddling around that classic symbol of nonviolence, a noose and gallows.
They're actually nonviolent, peaceful Americans. Their only crime was supporting Donald Trump.
That's right, just a ragtag merry band of freedom lovers. And you know they're peaceful because they brought peace restraints and peace spray. And they tapped this one police officer with their freedom pole.
You know, if you didn't know the TV footage was a video from January the 6th, you would actually think it was a normal tourist visit.
And he would know because he was there to greet those tourists. You see, children, January 6th was much like the famous optical illusion. While some people see two women, other people see nothing at all.
Supremacy?
Yeah, do you even know what that is?
Do you even know how to spell?
Yeah, supremacy. S-U-P-R-E-N-C-S-Y. Supremacy. Do you know how to spell? Or are you just a bucula obtruculate? Because I'm not the one. I know a lot more than probably what you do. I'm probably older than you. I'm very sophisticated and I'm highly talented.
Spell it one more time for me.
For those men who say, why buy a cow when you can get the milk free? Well, here's an update for you. Nowadays, 80% of women are against marriage. Why? Women have realised, why buy the entire pig? Just to get a little sausage.
Some parents are using TikTok as a teaching tool.
My daughter is 8 years old. I feed her bits of information every now and then about systemic racism. That way she's not completely ignorant of what America does to its people of color. In remembrance of Juneteenth, we started watching the 13th on Netflix. It addresses systemic racism. A few minutes into it, she sees graphic images of people being sicked on by dogs and beaten in the streets. She looks at me and says, I understand why mommy doesn't want me to learn about this yet. Because previous conversations that I've had with my daughter about systemic racism, she's gone back to her mother's, and her mother told her that I should not be telling her about that stuff. But I looked at her and I said, do you think black children have the luxury of waiting to learn about racism? And she responded, no. And I told her that the only reason you have that luxury is because you are white and you have that privilege. Being born white in America shields us from so much discomfort. Black Lives Matter.
The term colonizer offensive? No! But I imagine it must be quite a shock to the system. How jarring must it be to find out that while Thomas Jefferson was scribbling down life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, he owned 600 human beings and kept a 14-year-old girl locked in his basement. It must just burst your bubble that before George Washington was ever called the father of our nation, he was called town destroyer by the Iroquois. I wonder why. I don't know how to tell you this. There is no reality where the history you love and the history you'd rather forget are not the exact same history. The United States was founded on both and continues to uphold it. Stay uncomfy. Growing pains hurt.
Not only can you hear from everyday people from around the world about the hottest topics of the day, but celebrities also weigh in, like D.L. Hughley.
You said America is the only place on earth where you ask for justice, but you get a holiday. What were you thinking?
Right. Well, ultimately is this. You ever got something, you order something online, they send you something that wasn't quite what you ordered, but it's dope, so you keep it. But it doesn't change the fact that you want what you ordered. What we ordered was justice. It's dope that we got Juneteenth, but what we, and then if they, I wish that they would kind of categorize it correctly. It wasn't the end of slavery. It was 2 years after slavery was abolished.
Yeah.
And we found out. So it was 2 years that the government was complicit in letting black slaves in Texas be in bondage. So even almost everything that happens here is, if you look under the surface of it, it covers up some pretty heinous things. So I think that it's horrible that we could get 50 senators to vote on Juneteenth, 100 senators to vote on Juneteenth, but not 50 to vote on the anti-lynching bill. I think that it's horrible that we can get 100 senators to vote, on Juneteenth, but not George Floyd. So, and I think it's crazy that we got a holiday that is, the abolition of slavery, where more white people will be off on that day than black people. So it's crazy.
Well, Dr. King's
white
birthday.
White people get a day off of slavery. You're right. So
this is a point that...
I think everybody should be off that day, except I think black people should be off and white people should have to go to work. I think that's the way. That'll be fair. That'll be fair.
So he is a comedian, everyone, but I think there's some seriousness. And look, and he's got his cocktail. So listen.
Absolutely.
Do you think, though, that's because you think there was such unanimous support because by doing this, right, sort of commemorating slavery, that it is deemed like, oh, this is something that's in the past and we shouldn't worry about? Yeah.
You can't want to teach, and you can't want to celebrate Juneteenth, which is the end of slavery, but not want to teach it in your schools. Like, white people are going to have a hell of a time explaining why we have a day off and who those dudes are in the park, bronze statues are in the park with swords, and so they want to keep the remnants of a horrible time, the monuments of a horrible time. But they don't want to talk about it.
For all the potential good that TikTok offers, there are some problems, especially when it comes to black creators being credited for the work that they do. So much so that black creators on TikTok are now on strike.
We're going to put some respect on our names. Constantly choke out our content while simultaneously boosting our creators' dances. We're not here for your entertainment. It seems that this app has become more silent over the course of a few days only because black women and black men have said no. It's as if they've been telling the truth this entire time. Happy strike.
And finally, even with all the craziness this TikTok application can bring, it can also share some really good news.
I voted for Joe Biden this time.
This is 99-year-old Osceola Fletcher, and after 77 years, last week he was finally awarded the Purple Heart for his service during World War II. Shortly after D-Day 1944, a vehicle that Private Fletcher was traveling in was struck by German missile fire as they delivered supplies to Allied forces in France. The driver of the vehicle was killed, and Private Fletcher was wounded, but still managed to carry out his military duties. The wound that Private Fletcher experienced from that incident, as well as many others, should have been qualified him for the Purple Heart. But like so many other black servicemen during World War II, that honor was denied to them because of racism. Osceola Fletcher was not only accepting this Purple Heart for himself, he was accepting it for every black soldier that was denied this honor during their lifetime. So take a moment with me and commemorate black excellence. Osceola Fletcher. This is 99-year-old Osceola Fletcher, and after 77 years, last week he was finally awarded the Purple Heart for his service during World War II. Shortly after D-Day 1944, a vehicle that Private Fletcher was traveling in was struck by German missile fire as they delivered supplies to Allied forces in France. The driver of the vehicle was killed, and Private Fletcher was wounded, but still managed to carry out his military duties. The wound that Private Fletcher experienced from that incident, as well as many others, should have been qualified him for the Purple Heart. But like so many other black servicemen during World War II, that honor was denied to them because of racism. Osceola Fletcher was not only accepting this Purple Heart for himself, he was accepting it for every black soldier that was denied this honor during their lifetime. So take a moment with me and commemorate black excellence. Osceola Fletcher.
You've been listening to Gunshots Straight from the Hip. The views expressed are those of the host and guests and not reflective of any business entity or anyone associated with this broadcast. If you have any comments or want more information on how to be a sponsor, log on to our website at markgunmedia.com or call us at 502-407-0283. That's 502-407-0283. Thank you for listening.
Mark Gun Media. No hype, no hoopla, just damn good work.